one thing you need to know about pastoring is that when you pastor a church, I mean, when you are involved in the ministry, God is going to bring a lot of people your way, and you're going to build a sophisticated network of people from every sphere of life's endeavor. And these are people that will end up, either supporting you even ahead, in ministry, and people that you will have influence over that are very key in the society. And
leaders.
Very, very, quality and credible leaders.
Yeah.
So these are some of the things that you get to benefit from doing ministry.
Yeah. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to season 2 of the Nigerian Pastors Podcast. My name is Segun Aiyegbusi, and I am your host. And I have Pastor Joshua here again with me, our co-host.
Hello, everyone.
What's up, bro?
I'm fine, and I'm glad to be here once again.
Glad you're here, man. How was your weekend?
It was eventful, but I thank God for everything.
That is the classic Nigerian answer, man. How was church? Was church boring?
Actually, I couldn't make it because I had to deal with
Pastor Joshua didn't go to church.
I need to take care of my wife and stuff like that. She,
How is she? She doing good?
She's doing better.
Good. We're going to plan to have her and some other wives on this season, man.
That'd be nice.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
In fact, so I'm going to jump ahead here. Last week, or episode 1, we talked about what no one tells you about being a pastor. I was thinking, man, we should totally do an episode with what no one tells you about being a pastor's wife. Right?
Oh, yeah.
That would be great, right?
That would be great.
All right, we're going to get your wife,
You'll be
my
surprised
wife.
what will come out of that.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous. I mentioned it to my wife and she was very excited. And I don't know, I'm nervous about bringing wives to talk about the experience, but we're going to do it, okay?
Oh, yeah.
We're going to plan to have the wives here. But anyway, welcome to season 2. Like I said, my name is Segun Aiyegbusi. And last week, we talked about what no one tells you about being a pastor. And I was thinking, I think we went through 6 of them, right?
Yeah.
About 6 of them.
7, I think.
7 of them.
7,
and I noticed that all of them, I was kind of thinking, all of them were negative.
Yeah.
Right. And I felt, I was like, ministry's not all bad. There's some good things, right?
That's true.
So today we're going to incorporate, it's going to be a little more than 10. Not today, we already did 7, but we're going to talk a little bit, not only what no one tells you about being a pastor, but also some positive things that you are not aware you will experience, and that'll be beneficial for you. So that's where we're going to go. Before I didn't even say this, so our podcast, we are the media ministry of the Gathering Faith Leadership Network. We are a pastoral training ministry located in the city of Jos in the beautiful Plateau State, Nigeria, right? And our vision is to develop emotionally and spiritually healthy pastors who lead thriving churches. Hence, our discussion this season is going to be about a pastor life, hashtag pastor life. So, tell you what, let's jump right into it, Joshua, right? So let's go with what is number 8 or whatever number it is, thing that no one tells you about being a pastor before you become a pastor.
Okay, so for me, I agree with you. We need to incorporate some positive things.
Or otherwise, I think we're going to scare people about ministry.
And I want to begin on a positive
Please.
note. That being a pastor is one of the noblest, thing to do. And one of the things you experience as being a pastor that is very positive is seeing God's supernatural power at work in the life of people.
Yeah.
I mean, there is nothing as rewarding, as satisfying as you just seeing people who, might be broken, might be struggling with addiction, marriages that are about to split, and then God using you to intervene and seeing these couples or seeing these personalities, transform and change for the, for the better. I mean, there's nothing as satisfying as that.
Absolutely. No. Yeah. Like you're right. That as a pastor, we're really on the front lines of seeing God do supernatural things. I think many times we think of God's miracle as, the big raising the dead back to life and manna from heaven or, healing. And oftentimes as a pastor, we get to see real life change before others. So for example, I've had young men and young women who, when they first came to our church, were just broken. They were addicted. They were angry, bitter. And over the course of our ministry to them, man, you get to see them grow. You get to see them so that, literally I've had young folks who came to our church who we ministered to, and then, months down or a year down the line, they walk into church one Sunday and you're just like, my goodness, this is completely different. Restored. Absolutely.
Yeah. And some of them even end up going into ministry.
Yeah.
In fact, that is even the peak of it all.
Absolutely.
I've met a couple of, kids. They are no longer kids, right?
Of course.
We worked with, they were just kids, teenagers in one of the churches I pastored.
Yeah.
And he was telling me he's been to the seminary right now. He's in full-time ministry and God is just blessing him.
That's awesome.
You can only imagine the joy that came to me that day.
I actually was one of those kids. I am a pastor today, but if my Sunday school teacher in, grade 6 or was that primary 6, if they saw me now, they would be shocked, right? But that's part of the process. Not only young, but I think about even marriages, right?
Yes.
How many marriages as a pastor have we seen where, we were sure they were going to divorce. There was, but after being with them, we get to see new life. Yeah. Right. The family is healed. Yeah.
It's just amazing the way God works. And these are the things that really, we should look out to see how God is so faithful.
Yes.
But we are always looking out for the big things. We want to see the dead raised. We want to see the lame
We want to see an
walk.
arm grow back. I've heard people say, I'm not coming to church unless I see miracles. Well, it happens.
It happens.
And sometimes it's big. Sometimes it's God doing little things through family that people have written off.
Sure. Because it takes a miracle for someone to break out of this, addiction or marriages that are at the verge of divorce. The relationships meant and
that's exciting. No one tells you that they're going to be those. I've had moments where I've seen that's brought me to tears because of the dramatic transformation. So absolutely, that's something to look forward to in ministry.
Sure. That's something to look forward to.
Cool.
Yeah.
For me, I would say something else that no one tells you about being a pastor is that God will use ministry to shape you into who He's destined you to be.
Absolutely.
Right? God will use me. So I was thinking about the illustration of a diamond because I think many people come into ministry looking like rough diamonds. In other words, what I mean by so if you've seen raw diamond, a raw diamond looks nothing like the finished product.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
It's very rough.
Glittering. It's just that.
Yeah, it's brown. Some of it is yellow. And I was thinking about how I think for a lot of people coming to ministry, you have this innate sense that God has called you to something special, but you're not yet what you're going to be.
That's true.
And sometimes we try to rush that process. And oftentimes ministry is like the process of taking a raw diamond and converting it to something you want to wear around your neck or put on your fiance's or put on your wife's finger, right? I was looking online and I was thinking about how the process through which a rough diamond becomes this special, expensive thing. And let me just list out some of the process that a diamond goes through. It goes through something known as cleaving and sawing. I don't know what that is, but it sounds painful. It goes, get this. It goes through a process called bruting. Bruting is this idea of grinding, right? Until you can kind of get the core of it. It goes through something called faceting. So there's a chopping off cutting. It goes through polishing, inspection, and then certification. And if you think about that, right, in many respects, that's what ministry is. Like some of the most difficult people in ministry and some of the most difficult circumstances that we will face in ministry is what God uses to shape us into the pastor we're supposed to be.
Exactly.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like many times, and those are the things that some of us, or some pastors have quit ministry because of those things.
Sure.
But the idea is that if you stay the course of ministry, God will use those painful. We were doing a soul care seminar, and we were talking to one of the pastors was sharing his story about how he just feels like there's this guy on his elder board who's just out to get him, and the guy is always looking for something. And I shared this concept with him. I was like, "Is it possible?" I said because there will always be people who are always poking holes. But we said it last week. There'll always be critics.
Of course.
But is it possible that God has placed him on there, on that elder board, to keep you humble?
Yeah.
And to shape and mold you, you know, and when he approached that perspective, man, the situation hasn't changed, but his attitude has changed. And so that's for me, that's what I would tell folks coming into ministry. Or if you're already in ministry, just keep in mind that the trials you're going to face in ministry, and boy, there are some trials, and the difficult people, because you will face those folks, that it's very possible that for many of them, God has placed them in your ministry to actually mold and think about them like that, you know, bruting process. They're designed to grind out so that at the end of it, you're going to come out looking precious as stone.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with you, because when you look at, you know, look at scriptures in Galatians chapter 5, when the Bible talks about, you know, the fruit of the Spirit.
Yes.
I mean, think about it. What process would you need to go to develop patience?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
You know, what process would you go to develop, you know, tolerance, self-control?
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that you will have to go through the fire and the flood.
Absolutely.
You know, to build.
I have actually, somebody was talking, I was at a prayer meeting, and no, it wasn't a prayer meeting. It was a worship service. And the worship leader, I don't know what got into his head, but he's like, God, just humble us and work in us and grind. I was like, I am not saying amen to that prayer. I don't want God to humble. Like, I would rather just walk in humility because you're right. Like, I mean, the humbling, but like ministry will humble you. I mean, once again, at the end of it, you will develop those fruits of the Spirit. But that process, it may not be a smooth ride.
It's not a smooth ride.
It may not be a smooth ride.
Some of them can be as painful as, it can, you know. But when we endure, when we just allow the Lord to hold our hands and take us through
to that process,
we will come out refined.
Oh, I'm nervous talking about this, because I'm just, every time I talk about stuff, I feel like I go through it the following week. So let's move on. I don't want to talk about this anymore. I'm getting nervous that I'm going to get humbled next week.
Hi, Pastor Segun, Aiyegbusi here. Thank you so much for watching or listening to the Nigerian Pastors Podcast. You know, it's our prayer that these episodes have been spiritually uplifting for you and encouraging to your ministry and family. You know, our vision continues to be the development of emotionally and spiritually healthy pastors and ministry leaders who are leading thriving churches and ministries. So we want to invite you to stay connected to us through our social media pages, where we regularly update and upload our training content and upcoming events. So you can follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, or on YouTube at The Gathering Faith Leadership Network. We'd love to connect with you online.
Sweet. All right, let me go. Let me go for the next one, and then we'll bring. So, all right, I got to come back. This is not negative. It's just a reality check. But let me say this. And I need to give a disclaimer. I'm not going to give a disclaimer. I'm just going to say it. So here's what I want to say. As a pastor, and I think I'm going to get in trouble for this, but let me say it anyway. As a pastor, it is not enough to simply love Jesus and have integrity. You need to be able to lead people and understand how systems and structures work. Okay. So let me explain myself before anyone calls me a heretic. I think it is absolutely, in fact, the very requirement to be in ministry is loving Jesus, is integrity, is humility. But the point I'm trying to make is that you need some other things to be able to lead ministry. Like I came out of seminary thinking like, all I'm going to do is just preach doctrine. Like I was, in fact, the first series I preached the day after I graduated, when I was given an opportunity to lead a group, I started the book of Romans. I didn't even understand the book of Romans finished, but I was like, I want to preach justification by faith. Right. And I found out pretty quickly, like after my first sermon, people did not want to meet to talk about justification by faith. Rather, people want to talk about their grandmother who is abusing their mom. They want to talk about practical. I mean, I had like 10 or 7 meetings. I had some lead, and I realized I did not have the practical skills for how to lead teams. I knew theology, and I feel like I knew how to preach. But man, ministry like even if you have a church of 50 people, that's the average size of most regular churches. Even if you have 50 people, you're going to need, like you don't want 50 people knocking on your door on Monday morning, right?
Sure.
So the point I'm trying to make is this, is that yes, love Jesus. Yes, have integrity. Those things are foundational. They are requirements and they're what will sustain you.
Yeah.
But you need some practical administrative skills, right? You need to learn how to equip, how to identify leaders, how to equip leaders, how to train leaders, and then how to empower them and let them run with
delegation,
things. Right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
The king, until you learn delegation, right, and how to entrust and empower people, ministry is going to be a little frustrating.
Sure. I mean, what you're saying. Let's look at the life of David.
Yes.
The Bible says David led the people with integrity of heart, with skill, what's the, I can't even remember how it, but the idea is that he led the people, or he shepherded the people with a heart of integrity and with skillful hands. Yeah. This skill we're talking about, he learned all that while he was shepherding.
Yeah,
all right?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so these are things that this is actually the true,
balance.
The true balance that you have to work on. Yeah. Yes, you work on one side, you work on your integrity, your spiritual formation,
absolutely.
And all of that. But on the other hand, yes, you have to develop these skills of managing people and leadership and all of that.
Absolutely.
Very,
I
very
think even in
important.
our organization, I learned that, right? Like even here at the Gathering Faith, I remember when we first transitioned from the United States to Nigeria, and like that first year, I was still trying to figure out the ministry. And we had I did about team of 8 to 10 people. And I mean, like people would be knocking on my door like almost every hour. And I didn't really have a lot of time to do study and prepare training, because I was, and so part of what I've had to learn over the years is kind of learn system and structures. Like, okay, how can I arrange my team and put people in charge of departments? And I found that when I was able to actually spend time identifying, equipping, training leaders, empowering them over different responsibilities and areas of ministry, it actually ended up freeing me more to do a lot of the teaching that I wanted to do. Like someone said that, I said, they don't, I don't know about your seminary, but I don't recall taking a class in seminary for how to lead an elder board meeting. Right? Did you take that class? Like I went to learn on the job.
Of course. These are things you learn on the job.
So that's what I would say. I would say, I mean, I was being facetious when I said it's not enough to love Jesus. Yes, it is enough to love Jesus, be a man of integrity, but also, man, like learn some administrative skills, learn and empower people and trust
very important.
So,
yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, again, it is said that David, when Saul was the king, there was only one giant killer, right? That was David. But when David became the king, there were over 300 giant killers. I mean, you just need to read the passage and see the amount of army David was able to raise.
Yeah, David's mighty man. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. So it's just, you have to learn some skills, administrative skills, to kind of order things and set things,
in place.
On course.
Yeah. So if you, go on YouTube, take some administrative classes, take some courses on organizational leadership, right? Yeah. It'll help you understand how to structure team. All right, let's go to you, Joshua.
Okay, again, I'm all about positive today.
Because I represent negative.
No, really.
All right, good.
Okay, so one thing you need to know about pastoring is that when you pastor a church, I mean, when you are involved in the ministry, God is going to bring a lot of people your way, and you're going to build a sophisticated network of people from every sphere of life's endeavor. And these are people that will end up, either supporting you even ahead, in ministry, and people that you will have influence over that are very key in the society, and
leaders,
very, very, quality and credible leaders. Yeah. So these are some of the things that you get to benefit from doing ministry.
Yeah. You'll definitely, I definitely get that. Like I think about how in my time as a pastor, there are people that I was pastor over who've gone on. I mean, I know several people who are doctors and lawyers, but I know people who are governors. I know people that were in a congregation who are now actors. I mean, like Hollywood actors right now. Wow. And so you're right. Like over the course of our ministry, God will bring to us people who, in the future will be connected. And you're right, people who support us. Like I'm in Nigeria as a missionary, even though I'm Nigerian, it's a little complicated. But our church in the U.S., when I transitioned to Nigeria a few years ago, a lot of my place here is folks who have well established, who are supporting us. So yeah, absolutely. God will connect you to some really interesting, fascinating people who God will use to help you as you go along.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You told a story a little bit about your
my daughter was ill at one time, and we went to the hospital. And trust me, if I wasn't a pastor, I am not sure what would have happened that day. I mean, we went, and she was still a kid then, and she was to be admitted, and the pediatric ward was kind of full. There was no space, to keep her in and so one of the doctors, all right, who happened to be the head of department of the gynecology department, decided to move my daughter to the gynae ward,
Wow.
And then all the doctors in the pediatrics, fortunately, her husband is the HOD of the pediatric ward, and she's the HOD of the gynecology. So it was like they all came together, and they were routing doctors to come to gynecology ward to take care of my daughter. One of the doctors looked at me and was like, so how did you know these guys?
Wow. It's amazing, man. Pastors, yeah, you're right. Like, being a pastor will open some doors for you, right?
Sure.
Honestly, even in Nigeria, I won't lie. Like, there have been times when it's like, as soon as I mention that I'm like Reverend Segun, I mean, like, doors, it's like the Red Sea, right? The part, like, doors open. So, I mean, that's not why we enter the ministry.
No.
But, and it depends. It depends on where you're listening. Some places, perhaps they don't revere pastor, at least in Nigeria.
In Nigeria.
We know being a pastor will open some doors for you, right?
Sure.
Now, the key is we don't want to abuse those roles, right?
True.
That's where it becomes a problem.
Sure.
But yeah.
I mean, there's no place I go to that I don't find someone who knows me and is willing to help. You go to the bank, people are queuing up, and somebody just said,
Reverend, to my pastor, I
was like,
I think that only works in Nigeria. I don't know if that'll work anywhere else, but yeah, being a pastor opens some doors for you. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. All right, let's move ahead here. So I have, oh man, I feel bad. I'm back to negative again. My last one is positive. Okay, my last one is positive. So let me do this one first. So your success in the eyes of people as a pastor will be judged by how big your church is. I want to clarify. I didn't say in the eyes of God. I said people, unfortunately, will judge your effectiveness of success based on how many people they see in your church.
That's true.
I wish it weren't true, but unfortunately, it is, right? And that's the thing. It's like people. It's the only quantifiable thing that they can see.
That's true.
So you might be faithfully teaching the gospel, faithfully shepherding people, but if your church is not a certain size, people may not look on you like. And I think I'm saying that. For those who are in ministry right now, who are being faithful to the gospel, who are being faithful to shepherd in godly ways, and perhaps you're not getting that acclaim. And my next point will answer this question, but be very careful about measuring your effectiveness. That's what I would say.
Yeah,
be careful about measuring your effectiveness based on the size of your church.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
But the other thing also that I even bring up is that the problem with measuring your church based on the size is how do you know if your church has reached the level of, like, what's that perfect number?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like,
so
if you have a church of 900, does that mean what about the person who has a church of 5,000?
Of course.
Right?
So and then, of course, where are the real perimeters or the for measuring church success?
Right?
Is it the number,
Yeah. So I mean, that's I don't know. I think that's just good to put out there to say that, listen, you may come into ministry very idealistic, you're going to change lives. And the truth is that you pastors who have larger churches will probably be a little more revered and respected. So I would say what my advice to pastors is to say, I think we said this last episode, fulfill your calling, fulfill your ministry,
calling,
your unique calling, right? Like God may, over the course of your life and ministry, call you to simply faithfully shepherd 50 people.
Exactly.
And what he's going to ask you to give an account for is your faithfulness to those 50. Right? And the other thing also is that God has given each of us different capacities. Some people have a wider leadership capacity and can oversee greater organizations, but our success in eternity will not be measured by the size of our church, but rather on our faithfulness. In fact, let me go from there to this last point, okay? Right? Are you good with that? Did you have one more? Or
No, I'm good. Yeah,
all right. So let me give us the last one. I think you would agree with this one. And it's this, that I don't know if no one tells you this, but you may need to remind yourself more often about this, but it's this, that there is a special crown reserved for pastors in heaven, right?
Yeah.
There's a special crown, and that crown is dependent not on the size of your church, but on your faithfulness. What I would say is your faithfulness to 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 1 to 4. Let me read it, okay? 1 Peter 5, verse 1 to 4. The apostle Peter says this to the elders. So he's writing to, I think he's writing to the church in Rome. He says, to the elders among you, right? And we know in the Bible, elders, the title elders and pastors is interchangeable. So he says to the pastors, to the elders among you, I appeal to you as a fellow elder and a witness of Christ's suffering, who will also share in the glory to be revealed. Here it is. He says, here's the criteria for which you and I as pastors will be judged in heaven or evaluated. Verse 2, 1 Peter 5. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care, watching over them, not because you must, but because you're willing, as God wants you to be, not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve, not lording it, not bullying those under you, but not lording it over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. Please notice that there's nothing in there about the size of your church. Right? It's all about faithfulness. And then here's the beauty. Verse 4, he ends by saying, and when the chief shepherd appears, that's Jesus Christ, he says, if you've done all these things, here it is, you, pastor, will receive the crown of glory that'll never fade away.
Hallelujah.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord, right?
Yeah.
I love that passage, right? Like for me, it's not my life verse, but it's a verse, it's a passage that I'm always reminding myself, because what that passage tells me is that what Jesus will call you and I to be accountable for is, what did we do with the gifting and the ability and the skills and the talents he entrusted us to, right? How did we shepherd the men and women he brought under our care?
Very good.
You know
so
what I'm saying?
He actually entrusts the sheep.
Right.
We don't really go out there to pack.
That's
all
good.
right, so to say.
Yeah. Like in many respects, every member, every church every what do I want to say? Every congregant who walks through your church walls has or is being given to you by Jesus.
Sure.
Right? The church, the Bible describes the church as Jesus's bride, right? And it's like Jesus is saying, okay, Joshua, I'm going to give you this 100, these 500, this 900 people.
Sure.
I want you to shepherd them. And he's going to say, I don't know, let's use Paul Adefarasin, right? I'm going to give you, 5,000 people. And then, right? And so the task is, I need to be faithful to that task he's given me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the word there is faithful to the flock entrusted
to you.
I mean, entrusted to you. That is the basic line.
Hi. That is good.
So what people think about you, it's not always the ideal.
Yeah.
All right. People's perception about you being a pastor can be off, off the track.
Sure.
And sometimes the temptation is we fall, into this victim of people's expectations
on us.
I like what Miles Monroe said, that do not enslave yourself with people's opinion about you. All right. So in this case, even about your ministry, because they don't have the ultimate instrument to measure your worth. Christ, is the one we should look up to.
Absolutely. No, I love that. I love that. That's so critical. Because I think about pastors we've trained and how we've had, I remember one soul care training we had, and there were some, I don't know how else to put it, but some pastors with some large churches and some pastors with some smaller churches. And I remember one of the pastors expressing like his frustration that his church is not growing as quickly as he was. And I remember we were sharing this very thing with him to say, hey, listen, man, your task is not to grow your church to this guy's church size or style, but to be faithful to the task. Let me say this, because we got to wrap this up. Every time I always think about this this crown of glory, right? There's this idea, and we don't know if it's a physical crown or if it represents something we'll be entrusted with.
Yeah.
But every time we are faithful to the people God has entrusted us, it's as if you and I are replenishing our bank account in heaven.
That's true.
Right.
That's
And
true.
someday, as pastors and as believers, you will get to cash in all that you've sent to. I'm not talking about little cash, but you will get to reap those rewards you put in. So, yeah, man. So those are 10 things no one tells you about being a pastor. Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I hope this has been encouraging to you. We're excited. We got some really exciting stuff we're going to be discussing in the coming weeks. And so I hope this has definitely been a blessing to you. I want to thank you so much for joining us again, Pastor Joshua. Always good to have you.
Always good to be here.
Always good to have you. It's going to be fun. Thank you so much for listening to this. Please, if you enjoyed this podcast, if it was a blessing to you, please consider sharing it with other pastors. Whatever platform you're listening to this on, please share it on WhatsApp, Facebook, YouTube. We'd love for this to be a blessing to other pastors. Thank you so much for joining us. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you.
Yeah.